Hare Krishna. Welcome to the daily morning Srimad Bhagavatam class at Sri Radha Kalachanjidam. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Shtotra Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrind Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. We're continuing with our reading from Canto 7, Chapter 5, titled Prahlad, the saintly son of Hiranyakashipu. We'll do from text 25 through text 32 today, and text 32 is our focus verse. Canto 7, Chapter 5, text 25 through 32. So please repeat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We'll do the prayers together. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet. Can you do that? You should focus on this drishta. Stitch later. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, unto Naranarayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadev, the author. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamsha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Okay, so this is Canto 7, Chapter 5, titled Prahlad, the saintly son of Hiranyakashipu. We are on text 25. So yesterday was one of the most epic moments, you could say, of this canto. So it came on to a clash, finally. So Hiranyakashipu and his son, Prahlad, are having this conversation. And this is the second time this has happened. The first time, Hiranyakashipu, like all parents, sent his child, Prahlad, to a school. But then he had great control over what was taught in that school. So he asked the teachers to teach him specifically about materialistic way of life. This is what he wanted Prahlad to learn, because he was going to be the emperor next. And he wanted Prahlad to be well versed in economic activity, political activity, and so on and so forth. And then the first time, Sanda and Amarka, the teachers, bring Prahlad in the presence of Hiranyakashipu, it doesn't go well. So then he gives him a chance and says, okay, he's a small boy, he must be influenced by somebody else. He's not listening to the teachers properly. And then he tells the teachers, this time you have to teach him properly. Don't let him be influenced by others, especially my enemy. Because Hiranyaksha's brother, Hiranyakashipu's brother, Hiranyaksha, was killed by Lord Varahadev. So he considered Vishnu his enemy. And then this is the second time. After some time, Prahlad finishes his school, comes, and then his mother dresses him very nicely and sends him in front of his father. And then seeing Prahlad, Hiranyakashipu is really overcome with love. Bhagavatam says, yes, tears in his eyes, he's really loving towards his child, picks up his child, and Prahlad is just 5 years old. So it's natural, Prabhupada says, for a father to love the child like that. And then puts him on his lap, and then asks him very, very nicely, Prahlad, you've learned so much in school, and what do you think is the best of knowledge? To which Prahlad Maharaj recites the previous verses, which is the famous Shravanam Kirtanam verse. Prabhupada's purport there is incredible. And now this section is Hiranyakashipu's reaction to what Prahlad just did. At this point, he's really furious. He's given him a second chance, his son. And this time he is he's not able to tolerate it. So we'll see what Hiranyakashipu says and what Prahlad's reply to what Hiranyakashipu's questions are in this section. And this also, like 32 is the focus verse, but 30, 31, 32 are incredible verses. That's a Prabhupada quoted often, so often. So, but we'll focus on 32. We can't do 3 verses. So let's start with the translation of text 25.
After hearing these words of devotional service from the mouth of his son Prahlad, Hiranyakashipu was extremely angry. His lips trembled. He spoke as follows to Sanda, the son of his guru, Sukracharya.
O unqualified, most heinous son of a Brahmana, you have disobeyed my order and taken shelter of the party of my enemies. You have taught this poor boy about devotional service. What nonsense.
Even up to this point, Hiranyakashipu cannot believe that it's Prahlad himself who's saying this. He still thinks the teachers have taught him this. They've gone and disobeyed his instructions and have taught Prahlad about Lord Vishnu. So he's now chastising the Brahmanas, Sanda and Amarka, that why have you done this? And you can see actually we'll read this verse and then we'll see what the stark difference is. Can you continue, Drishta? 27.
In due course of time, various types of diseases are manifest in those who are sinful. Similarly, in this world there are many deceptive friends in false garbs, but eventually, because of their false behavior, their actual enmity becomes manifest.
Yeah, continue.
The son of Sukracharya, Hiranyakashipu's spiritual master, said, O enemy of King Indra, O king, whatever your son Prahlad has said was not taught to him by me or anyone else. His spontaneous devotional service has naturally developed in him. Therefore, please give up your anger and do not unnecessarily accuse us. It is not good to insult a Brahmana in this way.
Yeah. So you can see the difference in approach, at least, between the Brahmanas, Sanda and Amarka, and Prahlad. Right? So in the face of, Hiranyakashipu was so powerful that they say the mere raise of his eyebrows had the three worlds trembling. That's how powerful he was. He was no ordinary person. And there is this 5-year-old boy sitting on his father's lap and then defying him and saying, what is the best of knowledge, all knowledge? It's worship to Vishnu. One who has known this has complete knowledge, he says. And the Brahmanas, who should actually know this, come back and say, please, please don't be angry on us. This is not really our fault. They're getting away from it. And you can see how incredible just this one quality of taking shelter of Krishna is. Krishna says in the Gita, Neha Bikramanasosti Pratyavayona Vidhi Swalpam Apyasya Dharmasa Trayate Mahato Bhayat. That we don't even have to complete our process of devotional service. Swalpam Apyasya, even if we do this a little bit, Trayate Mahato Bhayat, that we can overcome the greatest of all fears. And here you can see that Prahlad was not fearful at all. At the same time, he was not completely arrogant, but this quality of fear was completely absent in Prahlad. And after this, we'll see how incredibly courageous Prahlad is. Now, Hiranyakashipu clearly knows after this point that it is not really the fault of the teachers, because I've told them twice and I know that they are fearful of me and they'll not disobey my orders, but it is really the boy. And this dawns upon him at this juncture when the spiritual masters of Prahlad give their opinion. And then he asks him this question finally to Prahlad. This is the first time, so far he has never thought his boy was capable of all of this. Now he's realized it. Let's continue.
Sri Narada Muni continues. When Hirana expects to receive his reply from the teacher, he again addressed his son Prahlad. Hiranyakashipu said, "You rascal must fallen off our family if you have not received this education from your teacher. Where have you gotten it?"
Yeah. And the next 3 verses are Prahlad Maharaj's reply to this question. So he's finally asking, who has given you this knowledge? I have not exposed you to any of this, but how did you get this knowledge? And this is a really famous verse. You can read the translation, but after reading the translation, let's see if we can figure out at least one line of this verse that Prabhupada used to repeat often.
Prahlad Maharaj replied, because of their uncontrolled senses, persons too addicted to materialistic life make progress toward hellish conditions and repeatedly chew that which has already been chewed. Their inclinations toward Krishna are never aroused, either by the instructions of others, by their own efforts, or by a combination of both.
Anybody get what this verse is? Puna charvita charvananam. This is, I don't know, probably one of the top 5 verses that Prabhupada repeats, I think, this verse. Puna charvita charvanana. Matirna Krishne paratasvatova. Yeah, mito bipa. Yeah, Matirna Krishne paratasvatova mito bibhatyeta griha vratanam adhanta gobir vishatam tamishram puna charvita charvananam. I mean, Prabhupada quotes this whole verse often also, but then the Puna Sharvita Charvananam is such a Prahlad Maharaj's vivid way of describing our subsistence in this material world. And the way I think of it is like chewing a gum. So this is our existence in this material world, right? How many of you've chewed gum? I've chewed gum when I was young. The first 2 minutes, the gum is all the juice in the gum is gone, right? But then do we spit it out in the after the first 2 minutes? No. We keep chewing and then chewing and chewing for hours together, thinking there is still 1 drop of juice left in that gum that I'll get. Ultimately, there is no juice. After the first 2 minutes of the bubble gum, it's gone, chewing gum. And then all we are left with is the jaw pain that results from chewing the gum for more than an hour. Or sometimes I used to play cricket, and you are on the field for 3 hours and you're just with one chewing gum for 3 hours. I mean, the jaw pain that you get, you're in the moment, you don't realize, but then when you finally spit out the gum is when you realize that, oh my God, this is hurting me, what I've done. But people don't even realize this is what Prahlad Maharaj says. Why? Because of their uncontrolled attachment to sense gratification. Because of that, they don't realize how the entire activities of sense gratification in this material world is just chewing the chewed. It doesn't have any substance in it. We're trying to see, oh, this will give me happiness. Oh, that will give me happiness. We've done this. We've taken 8,400,000 species, different birds. And Krishna, you cannot fault Krishna for not giving us options. He's given us a ridiculous number of options in which we can go ahead and try and say, okay, you go try. Try this, try this. Oh, Krishna, you didn't give me this. Okay, you can go and try this. We've taken and even within the species, like within the human form of life or the animal form of life, there are incredible ways in which we think we can be happy by performing different activities. But Prahlad Maharaj says, we don't realize this. Even, he says, either by instruction of others, by their own efforts, or by a combination of both. Even if we try, we're not able to realize this because of one thing, he says, because of their uncontrolled senses. This is the problem. Let's continue. When you get a chance, read these 3 purports, 30, 31, 32. They're really wonderful purports by Srila Prabhupada.
Text 31. Persons who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life and who have therefore accepted as their leader or guru a similar blind man attached to external sense objects cannot understand that the goal of life is to return home, back to Godhead, and engage in the service of Lord Vishnu. As blind men guided by another blind man miss the right path and fall into a ditch, materially attached men led by another materially attached man are bound by the ropes of fruitive labor, which are made of very strong cords, and they continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries.
Yeah. And this is a famous verse also. At least the first line Prabhupada mentioned many times. Does anybody know? Yeah, nate vidu swartha gatim hi Vishnu. That we don't know our swartha gati, that ultimate benefit is Lord Vishnu. And because we don't know that, we go and follow blind men who don't know this again. So people who don't know this are considered blind because they don't know what their ultimate good is. And therefore, when we follow such people, it's literally like falling in a ditch, Prahlad Maharaj says. And this goes on to also kind of reflect the situation that he is in, isn't it? That Hiranyakashipu is the leader now. He has no clue that following Lord Vishnu is the ultimate benefit for everybody. And then he is leading everybody. That's one thing. The other thing is his own school, where the Brahmanas, Sanda and Amarka themselves are not convinced by this fact that our ultimate benefit lies in worshipping Lord Vishnu. And therefore they are leading their own students, the blind leading the blind. And this is what's happening in our current times also, is that we think success means to be powerful, means to have a lot of wealth, success means to have a lot of followers. There's so many ways in which we can define success in this world, but very rarely do we define success as taking shelter of Krishna, ultimately surrendering to Krishna. This is not the general thought process of the world that we live in. And therefore, people are blindly following the blind. They are blind, and they are following a master who is also blind, and therefore ultimately they can't reach their proper destination. They fall into the ditch. And again, all of this is as a result of their attachment to their senses. Prahlad Maharaj is confirming that here. And even in his own position, Prahlad Maharaj thinks, this is what would have happened to me also. It's what you're thinking is right. I am in this environment where Lord Vishnu is not present at all. And I myself would have been following in the same way that others have been following under your kingdom, but there is one thing that saved me, which is what is this actual answer to Prahlad's question, this next verse, which is our focus verse for today. Can you take the Sanskrit? Naisham matista vadurukramangrim sparshatyanartha pagamo yadharta mahiyasam padarajo bhishekam nishkinchananam navrinita yavat naisham matista vadurukramangrim prishatyanartha pagamo yadharta mahiyasam padarajo bhishekam nishkinchananam navrinita yavat. Please chant. Naisham matista vadurukramangrim mahiyasham padarajo bhishekam nishkinchananam navrinita yavat. Naisham kramangrim prishadanartha mahiyasam padarajo bhishekam nishkinchananam navrinitaya. Mataji. Naisham matista vadurukramangrim prishatyanartha pagamo yadartha mahiyasam padarajo bhishekam nishkinchananam navrinitaya. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This is the word for word. We can read it together. Na, not. Esham, of these. Mati, the consciousness. Tavat, that long. Urukrama Angrim, the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is famous for performing uncommon activities. Sprishati, does touch. Anartha, of unwanted things. Apaghama, the disappearance. Yat, of which. Artha, the purpose. Mahiyasam, of the great souls, the Mahatmas or devotees. Padaraja, by the dust of the lotus feet. Abhishekam, consecration. Nishkinchananam, of devotees who have nothing to do with this material world. Na, not. Vrinita, may accept. Yavat, as long as. Translation. Unless they smear upon their bodies the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, completely freed from material contamination, persons very much inclined toward materialistic life cannot be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, who is glorified for his uncommon activities. Only by becoming Krishna conscious and taking shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, in this way can one be freed from material contamination. So this is Prahlad's reply to how he actually got this knowledge. He didn't get this knowledge by uncontrolled sense attachment. He didn't get this knowledge by following somebody who was so great at materialistic achievements, but he got this by literally pouring the dust of the lotus feet of a pure Vaishnava on his head. And who was that Vaishnava? Narada Muni. This is a very incredible recurring theme in Prahlad Maharaj's conversations and life and prayers. His unflinching attachment to his spiritual master. He even says this when Lord Nrsimhadev is right in front of him. In his prayers to Lord Nrsimhadev, Nrsimhadev is saying, Prahlad is thinking that Nrsimhadev wants him to come and serve him. And then in this prayer he says, "Oh Nrsimhadev, I was falling into this blind well full of snakes by this materialistic way of life. And somehow or the other my spiritual master pulled me from that blind well and engaged me in your service. So my first duty is to serve him," he says. This is the key, is that more than direct service to Krishna, service to the devotees of Krishna is more powerful. And here, Prahlad Maharaj says, even if you are incredibly materialistic, even if you have uncontrolled senses, the only way for you to actually attain perfection, attain the lotus feet of the Lord, is by bathing in the dust of the lotus feet of pure Vaishnavas. Mahiyasam pada rajobhishekam. And this is a theme that's constant in the Bhagavatam. And we've heard this before. The same words, almost the same words. And does anybody remember where we've read this? I remember this because I gave a class on that verse also. But, this is from the 5th canto. I'll give you a clue. Yeah, exactly. This is the conversation between Jadabharata and Rahugana, where Jadabharata is taking Mahat Pada Rajobhishekam. That verse also says Pada Rajobhishekam. Here it says Mahiyasa, there it's Mahat. It's the same thing. So this is what Rahugana says also, that the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava is incredibly powerful, that it can actually give us love for Krishna. Think about it. So this is purport by Srila Prabhupada. Becoming Krishna conscious brings about anartha apagama, the disappearance of all anarthas, the miserable conditions we have unnecessarily accepted. The material body is the basic principle of these unwanted miserable conditions. The entire Vedic civilization is meant to relieve one from these unwanted miseries, but persons bound by the laws of nature do not know the destination of life. As described in the previous verse, Isha Tantriyam Urudhamni Baddha. They are conditioned by the 3 strong modes of material nature. The education that keeps the conditioned soul bound life after life is called materialistic education. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has explained that materialistic education expands the influence of Maya. Such an education induces the conditioned soul to be increasingly attracted to materialistic life and to stray further and further away from liberation from unwanted miseries. One may ask why highly educated persons do not take to Krishna consciousness. The reason is explained in this verse. Unless one takes shelter of a bona fide, fully Krishna conscious spiritual master, there is no chance of understanding Krishna. The educators, scholars, and big political leaders worshipped by millions of people cannot understand the goal of life and take to Krishna consciousness, for they have not accepted a bona fide spiritual master and the Vedas. Therefore, in the Mundaka Upanishad 3.2.3, it is said, Nayam Atma Pravachanena Labhyo Name Dhyana Bahuna Shrutena. One cannot become self-realized simply by having an academic education, by presenting lectures in an erudite way, Pravachanena Labhya, or by being an intelligent scientist who discovers many wonderful things. One cannot understand Krishna unless one is graced by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only one who has surrendered to a pure devotee of Krishna and taken the dust of his lotus feet can understand Krishna. First, one must understand how to get out of the clutches of Maya. The only means is to become Krishna conscious. And to become Krishna conscious very easily, one must take shelter of a realized soul, a Mahat or Mahatma, whose only interest is to engage in the service of the Supreme Lord. As the Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita 9.13, Mahatmanastu mam partha dhaivim prakritim ashrita bhajantyananya manaso jnatva bhutadim avyayam. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. Therefore, to end the unwanted miseries of life, one must become a devotee. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarver gunes tatra samasate sura. One who has unflinching devotional faith in Krishna consistently manifests all the good qualities of Krishna and demigods. This is 5.8.12. Do you know who said this verse? 5.18.12, sorry, 5.18.12. Huh? This is Prahlad Maharaj himself. So this is 5.18 is where you have these different varshas. And this is this Hari Varsha where Lord Nrsimhadev is the presiding deity. And in different varshas, different deities are presiding deities. And all the exalted devotees of that particular place offer prayers to that deity. And this is Prahlad Maharaj himself. You see how consistent it is? That in the beginning of his life, this is Prahlad Maharaj speaking. Later when he sees Nrsimhadev, he speaks in his prayers like that. Much later, we'll see in this canto, his thought process is the same. And again, much later, when he's offering prayers to Nrsimhadev in the Hari Varsha, his thought process is the same. So, this unflinching faith in Krishna, in devotional service. Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tata gurau tasyete katita hyarta prakashante mahatmana. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.23. Yame vaishya vrunute tena labhyas tasyaisya atma vrunute tanum swam. The Lord is obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. To such a person he manifests his own form. Mundaka Upanishad. These are Vedic injunctions. One must take shelter of a self-realized spiritual master, not a materially educated scholar or politician. One must take shelter of a nishkinchana, a person engaged in devotional service and free from material contamination. That is the way to return home back to Godhead. Incredible purport, isn't it, Prabhupada? Every single purport, Prabhupada builds this argument step by step by step. And he does this the same way, even in this purport also, where he initially speaks about the problem that we all have at hand is how we are strongly bound by the three modes of material nature and how it is incredibly difficult to get out of this binding of three modes of material nature. Krishna says this in the Gita. Daivi hesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. It's incredibly difficult for us to get out of the bindings of the three modes of material nature. And therefore we might think, oh, we are so educated, I'm so scholarly, and the material education that we currently undergo also prepares us for that. Isn't it? I've said this before, but the goal of research in this world is not to figure out who we are or why we are here or doing what we're trying to do. I did my master's with theses. And every week for the first year, I used to go to my professor, and my assignment was she would give me 5 papers that were published in top conferences. I had to read those papers and critique them. Because that's how we would find our problem statement, what I would research on. We'll see what people have worked on and then try to find holes in their research so that we can take that and then try to give a solution to that. And there are thousands and millions of papers published, but it provides zero utility to our main problems of birth, death, disease, and old age. Nothing. I spent 2.5 years of research to do something, publish the paper in a top conference, but then that didn't benefit anybody, whatever I did. And then I joined a company, and then I was part of the research and development, and our goal was to file patents. This is part of the job description. We had to file 2 patents every year. Sorry, not every day. That would be incredibly difficult. Every year. And all those patents that I filed, I don't know if it will benefit people. And I'm 100% sure it won't, because it is temporary. What we are trying to solve are temporary problems. This is what the materialistic way of education teaches us. That if you publish patents, if you publish papers, you're considered scholarly, you're considered an educated person, and people will come and follow you. But they don't know that this so-called educated person has no idea what the real goal of life is. Right? This is the blind leading the blind. Prabhupada is making this point. He's saying why these so-called educated people, these philosophers, these politicians, whom the entire world thinks is worth following, are not taking up Krishna consciousness. Why is this happening? They can never take up Krishna consciousness, is Prahlad Maharaj's point. Because they are so dependent on their own prowess. The only way they can take up Krishna consciousness is if they bathe in the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee of the Lord. What does bathing in the dust of the lotus feet mean? Okay, one way is literally thinking that the devotee is walking and then you take the dust and put it on your head, or literally try to bathe. That has effect. Chaitanya Charitamrita says 3 things are really powerful that can actually give us love for Godhead. 1 is taking the dust of the lotus feet of a devotee. 2 is taking the water that has bathed the lotus feet of a devotee. And 3 is taking the remnants of the food that the pure devotee has taken. All 3 things have incredible effect. These are direct ways in which we can gain incredible mercy. But here, Prabhupada clarifies what bathing in the dust of the lotus feet of a devotee means. What does that mean? What is Prabhupada's clarification of what it means? Does anybody remember from the Prabhupada? Exactly. Is to surrender to a spiritual master. That's what it means to bathe in the dust of the lotus feet of a devotee. And not any ordinary spiritual master. He says it's a nishkinchana bhakta. One who is completely free of any material association. His only thought process is, how can I serve Krishna? And when we are serving such a devotee, how can we not but serve Krishna? And Prabhupada mentions this really famous verse. He quotes this so often. Yasya deve para bhaktir, yata deve tata guru. And I was listening to Giriraj Maharaj's lecture on this verse. Many years back he's given this lecture. And then he was saying, Guru Kripadas at that point asked Srila Prabhupada. Actually, Prabhupada asked him, what is the most important verse of all verses in the scripture? And then he replied, Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama eva kevalam, Kalau Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gatirandit. Actually, this is a very difficult question Prabhupada asked me within it. There's so many incredibly important verses. You could say Trinadapi Suni Chena, Tarorapi Saishnuna. So many verses we can think of. But Prabhupada, to his response, stopped and said, no. The most important verse is this. Yasya deve para bhaktir, yata deve tata guru. That who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master. This is the most important thing. Without that, we get nothing. But if we have this implicit faith in Krishna and the spiritual master, what happens as a result? All the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. And coincidentally, in our Chaitanya Charitamrita reading, we are reading this section that demonstrated this. Prabhupada mentions this verse in practically like 2-3 purports. Yasya deve tata parabhaktir. And does anybody have a clue? I mean, for those who have been joining, you might know. But the most drastic example of somebody who just by their unflinching faith in the spiritual master in Krishna. Did you? Yeah, that Brahmana in Sri Rangam, who was illiterate, but his spiritual master said, no, you should read the Gita every day. And people were poking so much fun of him because he could not pronounce it right, he was not able to read it properly. But still, he continued reading the Gita because his spiritual master had asked him to do it. And then when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu approached him, he asked, why are you crying? I see that you're reading the Gita and you're crying. And then he says, when I see how beautiful Krishna is in the front page, right? And Krishna sitting on the chariot. And how he has become a chariot driver to his devotee, I cannot help but cry for my Lord. And Mahaprabhu recognized. And in fact, he goes a step further and he reveals himself. In fact, when he sees Mahaprabhu, he can recognize that he is Krishna, which most people could not. He was an illiterate person. who could not read the Gita, right? But he could recognize the Lord who was standing in front of him. The Lord gave his, and then for 4 continuous months he got the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he was in Srirangam during the Chaturmasya. This is what happens when we have unflinching faith in the words of the spiritual master and Krishna. If we don't have that, we have nothing. Which is the continuation of the verse that Prahlad Maharaj says, right? For one who has unflinching devotional faith in Krishna, all good qualities of Krishna and the demigods manifest. But he says the opposite in the next 2 verses, right? For those who have all these so-called good qualities, and if they are not devoted to Krishna, then all their qualities are useless, he says. So this is the point, that we might think we are scholarly, we are educated, we are this, we are that, but if we miss this point of surrendering to Krishna and surrendering to the spiritual master, it ultimately results in nothing. Which is Prahlad Maharaj's answer to Hiranyakashipu, is that I got this knowledge by taking the dust of the lotus feet of my spiritual master Narada Muni. It is by his mercy that I got to know about Krishna. Without him, I wouldn't have got this knowledge. I would still be entangled in this materialistic way of life, which was his environment. Think about it. He was the only odd man out. We talk about association. Think about how powerful the association of Narada Muni was to Prahlad, that he was able to sustain his devotional service and even expand on that devotional service to become an exalted devotee of the Lord amidst an association of completely non-devotional people. And this is the power of the association of a pure devotee of the Lord. It can sustain us through anything if we take shelter of such association. This is the point. He didn't have physical association, but he was taking shelter of the instructions of Narada Muni. There's so many things we can speak about, but we're running out of time. So if there are any questions or comments or thoughts or reflections, we can. Yes, Mother Kunti. Do we have a mic that we can pass?
Srinath Krishna, it is always a privilege and a pleasure to hear your classes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. The question is about the qualified people that have no bhakti. A lot of times we have encountered many qualified people, but yet the devotion is not there.
Yeah.
But still, we need to engage them. And
yes,
do you have any thoughts about that and how to approach them nicely? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we have to approach them. The best way, I mean, Prabhupada, when you were saying about qualified people, I remembered this Katowski, right? Katowski? Huh? Katowski. Prabhupada mentions this so many times. This is this Russian researcher that he met who says this body after death is gone, that's it. He didn't really believe in the soul, and he was thinking how this is such an educated person. He thinks he knows everything, he's researching everything, but doesn't accept this basic fact. So, it is dependent on the person. For such a person who thinks, oh, I know everything, it's very, very difficult. Because the point that he's taking, Prahlad Maharaj here, is when we take the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, the first quality we need to have is humility. Isn't it? We have to think that I am lesser than this person so that I can take the dust from his feet and put it on my head. So the best way, I think, is prasadam. It doesn't involve much. And if we can serve prasadam, and slowly it purifies. And to this effect, my spiritual master says this story when he was in LA. The Sunday feast, there was a drunk man who would come he would start for the entire week, just subsist on cigarettes and alcohol, and he would come to our Sunday feast in LA, and then he would basically fill himself with like 4 or 5 plates of prasadam. This is all he would do. Come week after week for an entire year. And finally, at the end of the year, he thought, I should probably go and sit in the class. Saying something, let me see. And he finally realized in the class that the devotee was talking about vegetarian food, and finally it hit him that the whole year what he has been eating here is vegetarian food. His consciousness was so buried that he didn't even know that the food that he was taking was vegetarian food, what it was. But prasadam, over time, actually purified to an extent where you could actually realize one thing, at least, right? So it has incredible effect. So that's one thing I can think of. Yes, Chaitanya Chandra Prabhu.
The other one example, we're talking about the wonderful miracles that Prahlad Maharaj went through in his vacation with Krishna when Hiranyakashipu tried to kill him. All the different miraculous times. So, Hare Krishna. So we see in our situation here that Srila Prabhupada was the exemplar of someone who took shelter of the lotus feet of his spiritual master. When Srila Prabhupada left his house because his wife sold his Bhagavatam for tea biscuits, and he was living in Delhi and Vrindavan penniless with no actual fixed place to live or anything. And he was so determined that he started his Back to Godhead magazine, and then someone told him, you know, better to print books, they're permanent. So he took that as Krishna's instruction, so he printed the Bhagavatams with great difficulty. Even he wouldn't even eat. He would just spend the money on printing the Bhagavatam, because the order of his guru was to preach in America to the Western people. So then when he finally got here after amazing difficulties, and he tolerated all these horrific miseries because of the faith in his Guru Maharaj, then he was able to start his preaching, but also he was basically homeless, staying with different people, and finally he got one itty-bitty little tiny office room, which was so tiny that and then he got his things stolen out of the room. So then he had to move to a different place and a different place and a different place, and went through so much tolerance of so many miseries. Then finally the devotees got him this place on 26 Second Avenue, and then he had to train these Westerners who were drug addicts and had so many horrible qualities. So Prabhupada, and the austerity that Prabhupada performed it went on for his entire stay of his preaching in America, and then he took it around the world. But he had to tolerate so much unlimited problems throughout his life, and he would say, my only qualification is I tried to satisfy my Guru Maharaj. Yeah. So Prabhupada is our Mahajan in terms of understanding these teachings of Prahlad Maharaj, how to properly take shelter of the spiritual master. It's all in Prabhupada's life.
Yes.
That we can see the perfect example of how to take shelter and perform devotional service.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that point, Prabhu. I wanted to mention this, but it slipped my mind. But thank you for bringing it up, that how Prabhupada was an example of Yasyadeve Parabhaktir Yatha Deve Tata Guru, that his unflinching faith in the words of his spiritual master. It was this famous thing that I remember is where when Prabhupada was a Grihastha and he had some of his senior godbrothers come and do programs upstairs, right? And then they were talking about this verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Prithivite Ache Adi Nagaradi Gram Sarvatra Prachar Hoibe Moranam. That they were discussing how Mahaprabhu says in every town and village throughout this world, my names will be sung, Krishna's names will be sung. And then they were discussing what this Prithivite Ache Adi, what this every town and village meant. They were thinking, oh, every town and village in Bengal, or every town and village it could be in India. But they never really believed that it was literally every town and village in the world. But when Prabhupada heard it, he said, no, if Krishna said it's every single town and village in the world, it is every single town and village in the world. So this is his unflinching faith in the words of Krishna, and of course the unflinching faith in the words of his spiritual master, that right now practically in every major town and city in the world we have Krishna's names being sung. And we have devotees of Krishna in practically everywhere. So Prabhupada is the example, and so many parallels between Prabhupada's life and Prahlad Maharaj's life. He was preaching in an environment that had no clue about Krishna consciousness, to demons. And when Prabhupada came, he was in the Bowery, in Skid Row, and preaching to, like you said, these drug addicts and all of these people. But they had one incredible quality in spite of all those horrible qualities, is that they had unflinching faith in the words of Prabhupada. That when they did everything that Prabhupada asked them to do. So that was their glory. Yes, Mataji.
Yeah, and now I see that whether they're super qualified or super drunk,
Yeah.
or not together at all,
Yeah.
prasadam is the answer, because
Yeah, that's
Srila
what Prabhupada
Prabhupada,
did.
that's what he did. That was his formula.
His instruction was fill till your throat. Yes, Nanda Braja Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
I
Krishna.
think this point of different people with different qualifications really interesting. And I was thinking about how it is so important that we really encourage devotees to be experts in the thing that they do, because there's always someone that they can preach to at their level.
Correct.
So prasadam, yes, always, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, though, is that there's people that are stuck at a sense object level. And then there's people that are up at an intellectual level.
Yeah.
And so if these people who are intellectual are devotees who are intellectually inclined, we certainly know those people in our movement, right? They can preach to these people, right?
Yeah.
And get, be able to counteract their different arguments and this and that. Of course, there's some people that just won't listen, right? They just want, and we give them a cookie,
Yeah.
But I was just thinking how important it was to encourage people to do the thing that they do and really understand how to really be great in it, so that, because there's going to be people they come in contact that are also interested in the same things,
Yeah.
and they can tell them how it connects with Krishna.
Yeah. No, that's a very nice point. That if we progress well in our Krishna consciousness, Krishna will send us people, and then in our environment, we can preach to them in ways that they can relate to. This is Prabhupada's first line in his magnum opus of the translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. In his preface, he writes, "We must know the present needs of the human society." Right? So we should know what the present need of the person that we're preaching to is. What is his immediate need? I mean, this is what Prahlad's spiritual master, Narada Muni, does again and again. This is why he is the best preacher, right? Like to Mrigari, he doesn't say the things that he says to Prahlad. To Mrigari, he says, at least kill the animals completely instead of half killing them. That's his first thing. He is bringing them from where they are to their next level. And then eventually, with the association of Narada Muni, Mrigari, of course, became incredible. But his first step was not to say, why are you doing this and all of that. And first thing was, at least kill them completely. And this was his first instruction. So this is a very nice point that we have to know. This is why Prabhupada says in his Nectar of Instruction that you should quickly come to the platform of Madhyam Adhikari, where you can actually start figuring out people for who they are, so that you can approach them in that way. Because if you're still in the platform of a Kanishta Adhikari, then you think you are the greatest of all. Everybody should worship you and respect you, and there is nobody better than you. And from that perspective, preaching is impossible. Jiva Goswami says useless for Kanishta Adhikari is useless for preaching purposes. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Mataji.
So this, thank you for a wonderful class, Prabhu. So this may be like a question, just personal. So if I'm looking for a spiritual master, and with my limited intelligence, I see I'm attracted to someone who's, based on these qualities you've mentioned, free from material contamination, very attractive. And if I am also looking for the quality that I must be able to render personal service and get personal instructions, which one should I weigh more? If I have that ability to understand that, okay, here I'm really drawn to this devotee because of their qualities, but maybe they are so busy that I may not be able to get personal instructions. But then I have another option where I can get personal service and personal instruction.
Yeah.
Then I mean,
It's
could
actually a-
happen together, but
Yeah. The first thing, at least according to me, is we should be inspired by that personality. That even if that personality is not present, we are able to sustain by their inspiration in spiritual, devotional service, like how Prahlad Maharaj did. He didn't have the physical association of his spiritual master, but yet that little association that he got and the instruction that he got from Narada Muni, I don't even know if he got any specific direct instruction. He was just talking to him about devotional service and how he has to perform devotional service, which is an instruction that the spiritual master gives all of us, at least in our society. The direct instruction that every single one of us get is to chant 16 rounds every day and to follow the 4 regulative principles. This is the direct instruction of the spiritual master, right? And if we follow that, everything else will follow. And the way we should think of this relationship between the spiritual master and the disciple is not the way we think of relationships in this world, where physical proximity or because this is beyond material, this is transcendental relationship, right? That the spiritual master can still communicate with us, even if he is not physically present with us. Prabhupada said, there is not a moment where I've been separated from my spiritual master. Where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was not physically present in this world, and the amount of direct association that Srila Prabhupada got when compared to his god brothers was minuscule from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, although he got a direct instruction, which is very, very fortunate. Not many people get this. So I don't think that should be a consideration. And of course, Vapu Seva, direct physical service, is also not going to last for a long time, which is unfortunate reality of this world, is we will be separated at some point from our spiritual master. And if you're going to depend completely on just that, then we have not really understood. Now, Prabhupada said the Vani Seva is more important than the Vapu Seva. That taking the dust literally means to follow the instructions of the spiritual master. That is much better than taking the physical dust of the spiritual master. Right? So when surrendering to somebody, they should have all these qualities. But what I think is more important is this person inspiring me from within the heart, even in his absence or her absence? This, I think, is the most important quality. That person has touched us so much that they don't really have to be physically present with us for us to actually think of them. That every single thing that we do makes us remember that personality and think of what they told us or what they asked us to do, right? Which is what Prabhupada was doing. That one thing that Bhaktisiddhanta told him was ringing in his mind, even though he didn't meet him often throughout his life. That's what he was working for. And that one instance had inspired Prabhupada so much that he had seen so many sadhus, right? Because his father would bring so many sadhus to his home. It was not the first time that he was seeing a sadhu. But the association of Bhaktisiddhanta had inspired him so much from within the heart that just that one instruction he was able to carry throughout his life. Is that okay? That is my perspective. It could be wrong, but...
yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we should stop. We are like way over time. Shadam. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। वांछा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिंधुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय।